Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hi, beautiful listeners. Welcome back for another episode of Third Eye Awakening. I'm really excited. I've been waiting for this conversation for, I think it's like a month or something, but truthfully, ever since I heard her on Brandon's podcast, Expanding Reality, I've got Elizabeth Powers, the Meta Mama, here with me to talk about sovereignty, womb wisdom, sacred sexuality, sunlight, minerals and light code, discerning evil, all kinds of excellent things. I'm so excited for this conversation. So Elizabeth is mother, a womb shaman, super exciting, and a shadow doula. Oh my God, I love this. She's a sovereign creatrix, deconstructing paradigms and anchoring sovereign new earth codes and empowering others to step into their authentic selves. She's a high vibing honey, aligning to her highest and flyest timelines, making the isness her business. That is the best blurb I've ever read. Welcome, Elizabeth. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I've also been waiting quite a long time since I heard you on Brandon's podcast talking about the Akashic Records, and I was just like,
yeah, I know. I heard yours, and I was like, oh, we have to talk. This woman, she knows things. I gotta say, your Agent Smith kind of semi-analogy or like explanation for the way that people freak out when they hear like certain things, that totally blew my mind and helped me to understand some of the people in my life better and helped me to like move through the next layer in my own, like the next wall in my own dream reality, like into further freedom from like reactivity and judgment, basically. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, it kind of helps to, when you have that sort of like lens or perspective of it, it kind of helps to like neutralize the charge a little bit, because like my grandparents are agents of the Matrix. Like they bring up the jab and when am I gonna get it, and just like the party line, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit of like malice behind what they say, but I'm like, that's not you talking.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the Archon. That's Agent Smith. But it's funny, like, I mean, the jab and stuff like that's a big one, but like flat earth is another one of those ones where people like they just can't handle it.
I know. It's one of my favorite ones to see people's reactions, because it's really interesting. Like, even if you're not necessarily saying like the earth is flat and I'm 100% certain, which even if somebody wants to say that, like, who cares? Like, go for it. Believe the earth is flat, or believe the earth is globe, or believe it's whatever. But it's just funny if like you bring up the possibility that possibly none of us has actually seen the totality of what we know of as earth, and so we don't know the shape of it. Even just that is like, you shut your mouth. You shut your dirty, filthy mouth.
Well, because it threatens like the foundation of where we believe we are, like in space and the universe, like in the cosmology of everything. And it's like, if you don't know where you are, you don't know how to triangulate.
Yes.
Because that's like part of like the free will, you know, like we have duality, like we have these like binary belief systems. And if you don't know like physically where you are, like you can't triangulate to anything.
Yeah.
Because it just shatters everything, because you have to start questioning every aspect of your reality.
That's really what it is. It's like, where does the questioning end, and where will it lead me, and will it be horrifying? And I just want to watch Big Bang Theory, so just shut up and leave me alone.
I literally tell people, like, don't do too much research, because there is such a thing as too much research, and I have 100% gone there, and I have to pull myself out of that a lot. It's like I don't know, it gets really heavy, but I think that's also kind of like part of the programming. There is like the opportunity to like hijack that desire to know, and then like what's at the bottom of the rabbit hole. Like there might be answers, but you're also in the dark.
Yeah.
Still.
Totally. I remember realizing that when last year, because there was a lot, like I was very spiritually awakened and I was like semi-conspiracy awakened. Semi. And so last year was very revealing for me. And so I went down some rabbit holes. And I remember when I was going down the Celebrity MK Ultra rabbit hole, I was like, hold up, there's a glamour on this. Like this is also, you think you're going after the truth, but it's like a little false, it's a false white rabbit, right? Because it's pulling you deeper into the labyrinth of a false reality when there's a beautiful true earth outside. Like there's beautiful nature to go and interact with, and but it's very interesting. It's hard to notice that, and I think the only reason that I was aware of it is because I had to spend like 20 years basically figuring, I don't know, navigating a reality that seemed really weird and wonky to me. It just gave me like a sensitivity to be like, whoa, my attention, my life force energy is being pulled in this weird direction. And where is it going? What fruit is it bearing? Nothing.
Yeah.
Pulling me deeper down the hole, just like you said.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that true earth because like, and you kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt. Cause like, if you can't see it in your physical reality, like if you can't see something manifest, like whatever it is that true for you? You know, like there are kind of universal truths and like facts, but when you walk outside, like true earth, like sunshine, the sky,
Yes.
like the light codes, like the information that you get from being in an open, unobstructed, earthly environment, like that's real. So I think some of these rabbit holes are literally just meant to do that. Like it's a fragmentation, it's a distraction, and a distortion. And there's some it's like go down that one, like chemtrailing, geoengineering, like that's real, you know. And like there are fruits of that labor that are like positive, and we can use that to like bring awareness and then actionable change. But some of these ones, like the MK Ultra, are like honestly like aliens. Who cares?
My friend Heather would be like,
is the queen a lizard person? Maybe, but like that's one of those ones you're never gonna prove it. So like dip your toes, but like don't go too deep.
Well, I think that's it. It's like it's definitely never would I ever tell people to not research ever or critically think or explore whatever line draws them in. But it's more just like it's the same with anything that has to do with like entities lacing the edges of it. It's like just be aware of why and what you desire to get out of it, and constantly be checking in with yourself, because it's kind of like if you go on an expedition, was it spelunking? Is that what it's called? Like down into cave systems?
Yeah.
You can find amazing crystals and amazing specimens, amazing truths, amazing things. But I imagine, it's funny that I use this analogy because I've literally never spelunked ever, but I just imagine that you have to have all these checks in place frequently for yourself to, monitor the level of oxygen that you're getting, monitor the depth, monitor the footing. Like you just have to be self-aware all the time and know like you're not just like just throwing yourself in a deep dark hole that you might never come out of.
100%.
So let's talk about earth codes and light codes, because this really resonates with me, and I would love to hear how you perceive them and how you articulate it.
Okay, so, well, I grew up, and it started a while when I was a child, but I grew up in a really religious kind of like Southern Pentecostal household, so I grew up seeing people pray in tongues, and when I was little, my mom prayed over me that I would have the gift of tongues, and I think tongues are just like a way of speaking light code. I think that's a light language, and how it was explained to me when I was kid, like how my opa explained it to me, he says that it's basically like a language that the dark can't understand, and that's why he prays in tongues or he's speaking like. So I started last year. I started doing this like elemental embodiment workshop where we would work with like each of the elements, and I was in it was basically like an elemental mystery school, and I received the download when I was in Earth to start taking minerals. So like trace minerals, and now I have like this insane regimen of like shilajit and like zeolite and like gold and platinum, like transitional minerals and metals and stuff like that. But when I started taking the minerals, my body started interacting with light more, especially like sunlight. Wow. And I just started speaking in tongues again. I just started speaking light language. And a lot of times it would be like, I'd just be literally laying in my hammock and the sun would be like right on my third eye. So I'd just be like absorbing it through my crystal. And sometimes I'll translate it. Sometimes it like will come with a translation, and then sometimes it's just like there's just a frequency, and I don't really, some people are like, oh, this is like a Palladian light code or like Arcturian light codes, and I just like I speak from the sun straight up, and like that's pretty much it. But I think it's like it's an energetic coding. So I think it was your last guest was talking about how we're shifting through these like the magnetosphere from the sun, and we're having all these like solar storms and stuff like that. So that's sending codes of higher consciousness, and then when beings like download that code, like that's the new template. So when you receive a light code and you speak a light code or you hear a light code, it's kind of like it's like solar spiritual technology. And it starts to like create subtle vibrational shifts, I believe on the molecular level, because like we need minerals to do everything that our body needs to do, basically, like hormone production, everything. And crystals are basically like sunlight conductors, and they're minerals. So I was like, well, if I start taking minerals, I'll start conducting more sunlight. And I'm like kind of talking myself in a circle right now. So yeah, the light codes are new earth energetic templates, basically, to help catalyze like this shift. Because people are receiving these codes whether they know it or not. Mm-hmm. And putting an intention behind that can help like navigate, are we steering towards like new earth or old earth? And like the path to old earth is rapidly crumbling. And so like we're not ever going to be able to go back to that. And that's fine. And that's kind of what needs to happen. And light codes are a way to kind of like see the consciousness of those who might be unaware of like what this means or like where we're going. Mm-hmm. Going through for light codes right now.
I love that. And you absolutely blew my mind at the very beginning with that interpretation of speaking in tongues, which I imagine is probably really healing for certain listeners who grew up in like Pentecostal religion and have a negative connotation with that, but that what your Opa said is so beautiful. That completely blew my mind. It's just, it reminds me of, I've always been really drawn to, I think the way you say it, I can't remember anymore, but is Anishinaabe, but it's like the Ojibwe language, and also to Gaelic languages, particularly Irish Gaelic. But really all of them, and I think all of the indigenous languages are light languages, which is why they were destroyed, why they were pushed out of people, because they are languages that carry light, that the darkness can't, like, they couldn't destroy the language, they had to destroy the people's connection to the language. And I really, really, really believe that, because anytime I hear any of those languages, I don't know what they're saying, but it like rings in my being. It rings like a bell. I have been experiencing earth codes and light codes. Like I really started to notice them last year. I've always loved nature, as most kids do, I think. Most people do. But last year, when I would go out walking with my daughter, I became so aware that like the visuals and the sounds of nature, particularly for me, because I'm such a strong visual person, like the visuals, the patterns and textures of nature, it was literally recoding my brain. Like all I had to do is just walk around with open eyes. That's all. Like everything was being rewired. But also there's this place near we live where there's a river that like rushes and makes a lot of noise under a bridge, and you can just stand on the bridge, and that is also clearing out my brain. I can feel it just cleaning out so much garbage. And the smells, I'm very, very sensitive to the smells of trees. And they also, like, my partner Alex will say that I'm cracked out on trees because I'll catch a whiff of one that I love and I'm like, where is it? But I swear I think that's like new earth frequencies coming through, why it's been so noticeable for me, like just in the recent years, is like it's really more of that like high frequency, light frequency is coming through the earth, but also through us, and calibrating ourselves to it. I had a conversation in a mastermind that I held where I was channeling some things, and one of the things that came through that you reminded me of is that the sun is actually like the stars are oversouls. So when we say that we're Pleiadian or Arcturian or Sirian or whatever, the download that I got was that we're not from planets there. We are of the oversoul of that star, like the star is an oversoul, and that a whole realm exists in the frequency of that star. It doesn't have to be a planet as such. That's just how we conceive of things based on our programming. But when you said that you what did you say? You speak from the sun. That I was like, yeah, because the sun is our oversoul. If we're incarnated as humans, no matter where else we may have been or where else we're from, we are from the sun as an oversoul, I think, anyways.
In Hermetic Philosophy, they talk about how, like, when we die, like, different parts of us, like, go different places, and, like, the personality traits from the stars that we get in, like, our zodiac chart go back to the stars. So, like, there's parts of us that, like, reincarnate through, like, the planetary systems, and then I think there's parts of us that probably reincarnate on, like, a way higher level than that.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. So also, I'm super interested in this womb shamaness and shadow doula stuff. What is that?
Girl, it goes so deep. And when I started my womb spiral, I like to call it, I didn't even know like fully what I was working towards. I was kind of like working backwards. I was like doing this work and I was like, I don't know why. Like, I don't know what the wound is that I'm approaching. And then when I got there, I was like, oh my God. I had already been doing like so much repatterning and reprogramming. And I'll go ahead and put like a content warning. I mean, there's like no trigger warnings in life, but I'll put one as part of the story gets like really heavy, but for baby ears, I'll try to like make it light. So when I got pregnant with my daughter in 2017, I decided to, things didn't work out with her dad, thankfully. And I decided to be consciously celibate. So I was, for nearly 3 years, consciously celibate, and I didn't even talk to a man. I didn't look at men. I was just like, I keep repeating the same pattern. I'm attracting like emotionally unavailable men who like don't want to be with me. Like, they want to be with me, but they don't want to like put in effort to be with me.
I get it.
Like, we deserve more than that now. Thank you. Like, it's no longer please love me energy. It's like,
that's right.
How do you enter a temple? Like, on your knees and with offerings. Like,
yes. You make yourself worthy of being in the temple.
So I started, and this was kind of like when I was starting to really dive deep into human design and learning about deconditioning. And I started to really unpack the conditioning of like my womb story, because I had a really traumatic childbirth, like a birthing experience. It was super medicalized and not like really supportive for me or for her. But I was like, man, I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. Like, I don't want to keep attracting these men. And so I got like really serious with myself. So I like had a manifestation journal and started like journaling, not what I didn't want, but like what I wanted, like just daydreaming about like divine counterpart, like his personality traits, like the dynamic of our relationship. Then I started like really looking at like my sexual trauma, like my wounds around like my sacral and stuff like that. And I always tell women that I work with, like, womb work is hands-on, hands-in work. Like, there is definitely like the aspect of like writing about it and stuff like that, but they say the body keeps score, and our yoni never forgets. Like, there's literally a energetic as well as physical connection through our peripheral nerve system, from our nervous system to our cervix. So when we experience sexual traumas, like, not only do we like keep it in our emotional body, but we keep it in our physical body. And I like, if you've heard of Yoni de-armoring.
No.
So that's where you can get like tools and stuff like that. Like, they have like de-armoring wands, but I personally prefer to use my hands, because it helps to, number one, tie shame about our bodies. That like, I went to private Christian school, so like girls had to cover up, so we didn't lead our brothers in Christ astray or whatever. And even with like teachers and stuff like that too, like we weren't just covering up for the boys, we were covering up for grown men. And so like, there's just all this stigma against the female body and like your period and sex. Like, sex is meant for marriage, and if you have sex before marriage, like that's a sin. And so like we internalize all that. And so some of it's as easy as literally just being like, okay, well, that's all bullshit, obviously, and like doing the deconditioning work to move through that. But particularly with like physical trauma, so with the Yoni de-armoring, you basically like ask yourself, like, ask your womb permission to enter. And then, our hands are extensions of our hearts. So when we do like this hands-on, hands-in womb work, we're literally giving ourselves love, like a transfer of love from our heart to our womb to help heal that trauma at your yoni. So like, I like to double up my fingers, because in traditional Chinese medicine, these all have a positive charge. So you want to be neutral when working with your yoni, because if something's activated and you hit it with a positive charge, like it can kind of trigger you in a way that is not supportive.
Right.
But the Yoni de-armoring, you basically are exploring the inside of your vagina, basically, and just make like really open to sensations. So like, sometimes you might not feel anything at all. Like, you might feel numbness, you might feel hollowness, you might feel pain or something. And when you find that, just like sit there, like literally like sit with yourself. And oftentimes I'll experience a physical sensation, and then behind that an emotion usually comes up, and then behind that is a situation, or like, and so through doing that, and then you can carry yourself through, like, personally I like to do a lot of shaking. Like, I'll sit until that initial sensation is kind of more neutral, it's not so like sharp or so present. So I'll just stay with myself until it's kind of neutralized, until the overwhelm of that expression has passed. And then breath work is really helpful, like moving from the de-armoring to breath work. And then I like to do EFT tapping around that, because you kind of talk yourself through it, and then shaking. So you've experienced this trigger, this trauma, but then you've held yourself in breath work, EFT, and shaking all helps to regulate your nervous system. So you're addressing and you're reliving these traumas from the safety of your body and from the safety of the present moment. And then when you do that, it's a lot easier to accept it, honestly. So that's kind of like the womb wisdom and the womb work that I do. And it also brings more sensitivity to your yoni, because like, you know, just like if you cut yourself and you get a scar, then you have like the scar tissue that literally happens in our vaginas. And so like a lot of women think that painful sex is just like normal or acceptable, and it's not. It's because we've experienced this trauma and we have ignored our wounds. That's how she tells us no. Like, you know, I've told my clients, like, if he can't bring you to orgasm, that's your body telling you he's not safe. Like, if you get an infection after being with him, that's your body telling you he's not for you. And so we have to listen to these subtle cues, and then it won't be like, you know, a UTI. You'll just listen to her, and she's like, he ain't the one, sis. And then you're like, okay. But it's also really important, for me especially, I built a lot of trust with myself doing this work. So when I did meet my partner after doing this work, I could trust myself, if that makes sense. But I tell my girlfriends, like, I don't manifest people, I magnetize them, and I magnetize my partner, like, doing this work. So, like, I have my own receipts for its truth.
Yeah, I love all of that, and it makes complete sense to me. I'd never heard of it before, but we do the same thing in the rest of our bodies, but our Yoni Temple space is particularly important to not cut off forever, because it is the portal to our creative sacral portal, which is literally a portal to like the cosmic infinite, right? So like whether you are ever intending to be a child bearer or not, if you're a woman, you have a portal to the infinite cosmos where new consciousness can come in. So it's very important to keep that channel open. It's like blocking an artery. Like you just can't thrive without energy circulating freely in there. But it is what we do. We experience trauma, and our muscles, like the yoni, like the actual vaginal canal is a muscle. It's intricate muscles. And what we do when we injure any part of our body, sustain any kind of trauma, is we guard around that place, and we hold this micro tension of misalignment, and it tightens and builds and tightens and builds and locks deeply into place. And then then the rest of our body is in misalignment and is having to compensate for that. And that makes total sense to just sort of like, gently explore through, like, where in that muscle am I holding tension, and what emotion is brought up when I find it, and what circumstance is it related to, and then just letting that emotion be felt through to completion, and then being like, oh, okay, like the emotion was the thing I was guarding myself against. It was the emotion, like the physical trauma was the thing that created the emotion, but the physical trauma is long over. It's the emotion that we're guarding ourselves against, and the emotion is truly just transient. It's intense, but it's transient, and we can let it go. That's really, really powerful and beautiful stuff. And it brought to mind, I'm running, co-facilitating a round of the Priestess Codes portal right now, and this discussion came up, and it's part of transmission 3, I think, that talks about the yoni space being a temple, truly being a temple, and kind of how the sexual dynamic would ideally flow if our blueprint were uncorrupted, and as we return to our uncorrupted blueprint as human beings. And it's wanting to be spoken about now, is that the woman is the the altar and the man is the offering. Women receive, we give through our heart and we receive through our yoni. And men give through their Shiva Lingam and they receive through their heart. And when it's a connection that honors both individuals, and of course this is a conversation specifically about heterosexual coupling, but I think it can be extrapolated for anyone who doesn't fit into that, because we all carry the feminine and masculine charge. But like ideally the man would make himself worthy, put down his armor, put down his weaponry, like sort of like purify himself through his intentions and make himself like soft and worthy of being admitted into the temple. And then he gets to make his most profound offering, which is how he shows his love. And then it gets received. And through that receiving, the circuit is complete because she welcomes him into the embrace of the love that comes out of her heart. And he then is received in his softness. And it's like, it has the potential to be so beautiful, but man, isn't it just all kinds of fucked up?
Yeah. And I don't know, and that's part of like the programming though.
Yeah.
And part of what we have to decondition is, I mean, you know, when I was growing up, this movies like American Pie,
right?
You know, like Spring Break. So it's like you have this ridiculous idea of like what sex is, how people have sex, especially for the first time. It's never been like like ripping clothes off and just like falling over everything, like flipping the couch. It's just like, that is so unreal.
I think more that often than not, it's like horribly clumsy and full of insecurity. Very, very awkward. Yeah, but that stuff is so important for like it. I just love the idea of the profoundness and the simplicity of it, like finding the emotions that are hidden and guarded in that space. And I'm sure there's a way that men can do it as well for their own selves. It's probably more around the heart for most men, but
one thing for men, what they can do is massage, because what we're talking about is like not self-pleasure, although that's like 100% a ritual that I encourage, but like literally like a massage. So like I've heard that men can palpate if they were circumcised, that scar, because that, I mean, like that's a major sexual trauma, a mutilation, like when you are completely wide ass open from the other side.
Yeah, it's like, welcome to Earth in a male body. Let's, you know, when you're freshly here, a couple days old, let's slice off part of your genitalia and then expect you to be in your divine masculine. Like, it's so fucked up. It's like, so fucked up.
I don't know. I kind of think that there's some sort of like weird egregore over the entire like birthing process. Like, when they used to strap women down, like give them these crazy drugs, so they would have a twilight birth. And I can't remember who I heard this from. It was on like a birthing. Women would have these terrors and just start screaming so loud that they would have to have like oiled cotton balls put in their ears so they wouldn't wake themselves up from their terror screams. And like that's how women were birthing babies. So like, you want to talk about like a fucked up template, like that's
exactly. It totally, like, when I feel like I talk ad nauseum about how programmed we are, but it's because we are. Because like from the point of preconception, we are buried under these we're buried under all of these like fucked up rituals and all of these screwed up ideas that are projected onto us before we even enter into like a body, certainly before we're born into our sovereignty, and we're not born into our sovereignty furthermore. And I completely, like, even though it's typically way less destructive and overt than that these days, I had to leave midwifing. I had to, because I mean, you experienced it. I couldn't be part of that. I could not watch my hands participate in something that my whole entire being was screaming, this is wrong. You're taking away her power. You are, like, I just knew on almost every birth that somebody was making the wrong call, because they couldn't sense the energy, and they're so brainwashed by the system. Not necessarily because they had, like, they reveled in disempowering women and babies, but because they just thought this is the way it has to be. But like, I was like a drop in a bucket in a system that was so well oiled that it was like my voice wasn't heard, and when it was heard, I was looked at like I was crazy, and I was like, I can't do this. And I've been really lucky to have like pretty good birth experiences, but I just gave birth to him on my own. I was like, I don't need anybody. The nicest, best midwife ever. And if I felt like I needed her, I would have called her, and I know she would have been amazing. But I was just like, I wonder what it'll be like if I just let it happen. And I don't worry about anybody else's reaction or timekeeping or anything else. It was different. It was different in an awesome way.
Yeah. I was considered high risk, but I attended my friend's unassisted free birth, and it was her first one. Like, the doctor kept trying to push drugs on her, and she's like, I don't want it. And she's also, like, she's Black, so she was afraid, like, the statistics as well as anybody, so she decided to do an at-home free birth, and that was the coolest party I've ever been to. We got, like, singing bowls and tub, and it was just like, this is the way it needs to be, with, like, a really small group of 100%, like, supportive women, because there's no room for fear in the birthing space, But it's like, I didn't even know that you could have, like, an ecstatic or orgasmic birth until a few years ago, because all you ever see are, like, women on their backs in hospitals screaming. It's like, oh my God. It's wild.
Yeah, or the epidural. Like, you see them on their back screaming, or you see, like, happy women with the epidural, and then so you think going into it, like, why wouldn't I get the epidural? And I'll be very, very plain. Like, I have very painful births. They are painful. They're not a walk in the park. I'm not an easy birther, so it's not to say that it's easy, but it's just like, it's also designed to unravel physiologically towards our survival, and of course babies die, and of course women die, because we're mortal, but most of the time it works. And then furthermore, the feeling that I have that allowed me to do this is that I don't feel that death is a failure. And I learned that through my son that died, because I don't feel like he failed at all. I don't feel like I failed him. I don't feel like he failed. I don't feel like the medical professionals failed. I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gone to the hospital and I had just allowed him to be born at home. He would have died. But I wonder what that would have been like to just let that happen. But it's not what happened, and it's okay, and I'm okay with it. But like, this idea that we're seeing play out on a really large scale right now, that death is some kind of like bad guy to be overcome, and that it's a failure, is it leads to madness. Death is called being incarnated in an organic body that has vulnerabilities.
And I think that's part of, like, kind of the scientific materialism that death is a failure, because according to them, like, there's nothing after it, so it's like so many people dedicate their lives to controlling every aspect of, making sure they don't get cooties, or, like, don't get hurt, don't do anything dangerous or risky, or don't die. And it's like, well, all those spaces, like, that's where the magic comes in, like, you need room in your life for, like, God and mystery, because that's what real life is, like.
Yeah, how boring would it be if we solved every mystery? My 3-month-old has decided that this conversation is over.
That's fine. He's off.
I so just want to keep talking to you, but I have a feeling that he's gonna serenade us the whole time. He's trying to let us know.
Baby's got a baby.
Baby's got a baby. Well, I will have to have you back because I know that there's so much more for us to talk about. Like so much that I want to get into that we didn't get the chance to talk about today. But thank you so much for your time. It was so exciting to have part 1 of this conversation. And
thank you.
Can you let the listeners know where they can find you?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram and TikTok, you can put it in the show notes, right?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so it's the Meta Mama on TikTok and Instagram, and then I just launched my website today.
Yay!
It's a little rough around the edges, and my Virgo placements are like, it's not perfect. They're going to judge you, but we're doing it. But I have sessions on there, like I do human design reading, biofield tuning. I also make orgonite, so I have a bunch of those up there. I am doing the non-toxic holistic switch for my life, and I want to share that with other people, so I have a remineralizing tooth powder on the site. I make my own skincare products, so those will be up soon when they're ready. So there's like a lot of high vibe goodies up for grabs, and that's on themetamama.com.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to check that out for sure. And it just reminded me too, I wanted to ask you about the minerals. Where did you find those minerals that you started, that give the crazy regimen that you're on now?
Okay, so I get pretty much all of my supplements from Alpha Vedic, from Dr. I think it's like Bear Lando. I heard him on the Higher Side Chats, but he is like such a chill ass old guy. But he pretty much makes all of his minerals and vitamins. I've been in the market for a long time for quality supplements, and I found them. It's Alpha Vedic, like ALFAVEDIC.
Awesome.
I take a lot, not a lot now, but I take a handful. The 0 Point Solutions #1, it's like a liquid daily multivitamin and mineral, and all of his 0 Point solutions have like humic and fulvic acid, so like shilajit in it, which is like has a super high mineral content, so it gets you your minerals so you can download your light codes. But my hormones have been coming back into balance since ending pregnancy and breastfeeding. They've kind of been all over the place, but I feel my body coming more into homeostasis now. Yeah, that's where I get them. I'm trying to think. Yeah, he's got a lot of stuff on there, like carbon 60, which I take from him, and then like magnesium spray and all that kind of stuff. But that's where I get mine.
Awesome.
And I don't have a promo code to share, but maybe now.
You're like, wait a minute. Yeah, you should totally call them up and be like, hey, I will plug your awesome products.
Yeah, for real. I do on my TikTok all the time. I'll like make my morning water, and people are like, what are you drinking? I'm like, here it is, but I'm not selling it. I just really believe in the product.
Well, that says something too. Awesome. All right. Well, sadly, I cut this short. Sorry for the short episode, listeners. Hopefully you love me anyway, and hopefully you love William. He's pretty cute for a baby. Thank you so much for your time and your attention, everybody. I adore you from the bottom of my heart and soul, and I will catch you on the next episode. Hello, beautiful being of shadow and light. If you loved this episode and you want more, you can join my new membership, Light Codes. This membership is the place where you will receive all the light codes that I am channeling on how to navigate the intensifying energies of this next phase of the rapid awakening and ascension of the human collective consciousness on Earth. But also all the light codes on how to step into our highest selves, to activate our soul mission, to harness our magic and power as creators, and to manifest the highest timelines for ourselves and for the collective. To find out more information about light codes and all the ways to work with me, see the link in the show notes or visit amybelair.com. Thank you so much for being here with me on this episode. I appreciate you more than my words could ever say. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share, and I will catch you on the next episode.